Wole Soyinka's The Bacchae of Euripides. A communion rite is a radical reimagining of the ancient Greek tragedy The Bacchae by Euripides, first produced in 405 BCE. Soyinka, a Nobel laureate from Nigeria, adapts the original to reflect African ritual, mythology, and political realities, particularly those of post-colonial Africa. While Euripides' original deals with the arrival of Dionysus in Thebes and the destruction of King Pentheus for denying the god's divinity, Soyinka transforms the narrative into a symbolic meditation on power, identity, and spiritual renewal, with added emphasis on communal sacrifice and the cyclical nature of death and rebirth. Soyinka's version is more than a translation. It is a ritual drama, a communion rite, in which violence, death, and divine ecstasy serve as transformative forces. The play becomes a commentary on the struggle between rigid authority and liberating chaos, resonating with Africa's colonial and post-colonial experiences. 1. The premise and background. The story begins in Thebes, where Pentheus, the young and rational king, has banned the worship of Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and ecstasy. Dionysus, whose mother Semele was a mortal woman, has returned in human form to avenge his mother's dishonor and to prove his divine status. Dionysus has caused the women of Thebes, including Pentheus' own mother Agave, to abandon their homes and flee to the mountains to worship him in frenzied rituals. The city is in moral panic, and Pentheus sees this as a threat to order and state control. 2. Dionysus versus Pentheus. Disguised as a mortal priest, Dionysus allows himself to be captured by Pentheus. Despite mocking and humiliating the god in disguise, Pentheus is both fascinated and fearful of Dionysus' strange power. Dionysus uses this psychological leverage to lure Pentheus into a trap. He convinces the king to dress as a woman and spy on the Bacchic rituals on Mount Cithaeron. Once there, Pentheus is discovered and torn to pieces by the maddened women, including his own mother, who, in her trance-like state, believes him to be a lion. 3. The tragic climax and aftermath. After the slaughter, Agave returns triumphantly with her son's head, only to realize in horror that she has murdered him. The play ends with the collapse of royal authority, the vindication of Dionysus, and the devastation of Thebes. However, unlike Euripides' version, Soyinka adds a ritualistic, redemptive layer. Pentheus' death is not merely punishment, but part of a sacrificial rite, necessary for societal transformation and spiritual renewal. Analysis. 1. Major themes. A. Order versus chaos, reason versus passion. The central conflict is between Pentheus, the embodiment of rationality, order, and authority, and Dionysus, the force of emotion, instinct, nature, and spiritual ecstasy. Soyinka explores the danger of denying the irrational aspects of human nature and the tragic consequences of repressing spiritual expression. Dionysus represents not only a god but also the chaotic, liberating energy that exists outside state control. His rites are dangerous because they unleash suppressed desires and break social hierarchies, but they are also necessary for renewal. B. Colonialism and post-colonial authority. Soyinka adapts the story to reflect the African post-colonial experience, where new nation-states, led by rigid, rationalist elites, like Pentheus, often suppress indigenous religions, cultures, and traditions, symbolized by Dionysus. Pentheus can be seen as a metaphor for modern authoritarian leaders who deny the power of ancestral belief systems and pay the price for their alienation from the spiritual and cultural roots of their people. C. Sacrifice and communion. The subtitle, A Communion Rite, is crucial. Soyinka transforms the tragedy into a ritual of death and renewal. Pentheus' destruction becomes a necessary sacrifice that brings balance between the human and divine, the rational and the ecstatic. Soyinka draws from Yoruba cosmology, where the spiritual and material worlds interact, and where death is not an end but a transformation. The play thus becomes a ritual performance, not just a drama. 2. Differences from Euripides. While Soyinka preserves the plot structure of the Bacchae, he reinterprets its meaning. In Euripides, Dionysus is vengeful and cruel, and the play is a cautionary tale about denying the gods. In Soyinka, Dionysus becomes a symbol of suppressed spiritual truth, and his vengeance is part of a necessary cosmic balance. Euripides focuses on individual tragedy, whereas Soyinka emphasizes communal and ritual dimensions. Soyinka's Dionysus is more Africanized, connected to ritual drumming, mask performance, and ancestral spirits. The play incorporates ritual songs and choruses that draw from African performance traditions. 3. Symbolism. Dionysus. More than a Greek god, he becomes a symbol of the spiritual, repressed self, of the unconscious, of ancestral heritage. His arrival signifies reconnection with lost identity. Pentheus represents Western rationalism, authoritarianism, and the denial of indigenous belief systems. His downfall is both personal and symbolic. Agave, tragic figure who symbolizes the cost of communal frenzy and spiritual blindness. Her horror reflects the deep emotional cost of spiritual revelation. Ritual and dance. Soyinka uses music, drumming, and movement not merely for aesthetic effect but as cultural tools of transformation. The performance is meant to be immersive and cathartic, evoking actual rites of passage or spiritual initiation. 4. Language and structure. Soyinka's language is richly poetic and layered with mythological resonance. He fuses the classical form of Greek tragedy with African orature, creating a hybrid that feels both ancient and immediate. The use of ritual language, drum rhythms, and choral chants makes the play more than text; it becomes performance as communion. This aligns with Soyinka's belief in the fourth stage of theater, where ritual, myth, and drama intersect. Conclusion. The Bacchae of Euripides, a communion rite, is a play about spiritual reckoning, societal balance, and the power of myth to speak to contemporary realities. Soyinka uses the ancient story to explore modern themes: the danger of authoritarian repression, the consequences of cultural disconnection, and the potential for renewal through sacrifice and ritual. By blending Greek form with African ritual, he creates a universal yet culturally specific work, affirming that the gods, however we define them, cannot be denied without consequence.